Hi, I'm Shlomi Ron. I'm the founder and CEO of the Visual Storytelling Institute. We are based here in sunny Miami, Florida, and our mission is really bringing the gospel of visual storytelling from the world of art into a more human and purposeful marketing. So as you've been following my podcast, you've probably seen that in the past couple of episodes, I was focusing largely on the metaverse and Web3. So today I figured, we're going to change a little bit our direction and focus on something more earthy, like how people use pets in their visual storytelling. So this is a very interesting topic because the fact is that we all love animals. And if you look at the recent stats, you'll see that 70% of US households own a pet. And this is up from 56% in 1988, which is incredible. And overall, the pet industry is expected to reach $360 billion by 2027. So I'm sure you all have your own examples of pets in ads, like Taco Bell Chihuahua, the Target Bull Terrier, and others. So today we're going to talk about how can brands use pets in visual storytelling to create emotional connections. To help me with this mission, I invited Mindy Dutka. She's the founder and chief storyteller at Dogs I Meet. And she has tremendous experience in this field of visual storytelling using pets for both brands and pet brands. So with that, welcome to the show, Mindy.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Awesome. No, this is great. When we first met, I was kind of quite, fascinated by the way you use the camera to tell visual stories for brands using pets. So I figured, let's dig deeper into this. And before we do, I'd love to kind of get a sense of your backstory, how you got started, what was that magic moment that made you decide, okay, I'm going to focus on visual storytelling using pets?
Well, it started, I'll say it started with my lifelong love of dogs. And I also have a lifelong love of photography. I got my first dog and my first camera at the age of 7.
Oh,
And
wow.
since then, I've not been without either. I have a very varied background before I came to dog photography. I had an event planning company for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Fortune 500 companies in sales and done a variety of other things. And about 6 years ago, I just reached a point and thought it was time to create a career that I was, passionate about. And
Makes sense.
I decided, well, why don't I just marry my two loves,
Yeah.
dogs and photography? And when I first started, I was an amateur
Mm-hmm.
photographer who always loved photography. But since then, I've done a lot of work, and like anything else, every niche is different that you photograph. And certainly
Right.
dogs is very different than photographing sports or different things. But my connection with dogs, I like to say I definitely speak dog. So I have a lot of patience for dogs, and I'm knowledgeable about dogs, and I work on their time. And I think that comes through in the photos that I
Right.
take.
Were you
And
taking any photography
I've
programs?
taken many photography programs since I started,
I see.
varying from online
Hmm.
to one-on-one in-person mentorships
Wow.
to group workshops.
I see.
And that's just an ongoing quest
Right. Yeah.
to
To perfect the craft. Absolutely.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, my belief, the tagline of my business is because every dog has a tail,
I love
T-A-L.
it. It's so clever. I always want to tell you this. It's, when the first time I saw it, I said, whoa, this is really Way to remember this brand.
Thank you very much. And to me, every dog does have a tail. Like people who own dogs,
Mhm.
particularly that got rescue dogs,
Yep.
I'm pretty sure, like me, you look at the dog and you're like, so what happened? What happened before you got here? And you start to make up stories in your head,
Yeah,
and then so dogs have many stories, and then dogs bring to us many stories. And
absolutely.
then I just sort of took that a step further into businesses and brands. When I first started, I did private clients, but my background in events and everything was more of a B2B. So I
I
was
see.
looking, as my photography improved, and I got, more adept, and with my skills and other things, and also a passion for storytelling.
Yeah,
I started to do work for brands,
I see.
I
So,
primarily work with pet brands, but I can certainly work with any brands, and we'll start to talk about that. I
right,
mean,
right. So
me,
before we talk about your actual work with brands, let's take a kind of a forest view first. And this is a question I ask all my guests. How you really define, based on your trajectory, what is visual storytelling from your standpoint?
visual storytelling is, it could be symbols, it could be drawings, and in my language is photography.
Yep.
So to me, when you look at a photograph, and it literally, it paints a picture, and it
Right.
uses light, and it uses images, and the way a picture is together, it's not always the most technically
Mm-hmm.
correct
Right.
photo there.
Yep.
The main thing to me is if it evokes emotion,
Yep.
and it draws you in, it makes you question what the story is. And I think it's almost not even it's the job of a photographer to lead you into that photograph with a story, and it doesn't, not to tell them the exact story, because everybody could look at the same photograph
Live a
and come away
mystery. Yep.
right
I
with the
see.
mystery of it.
I see.
So to me, it's a visual storytelling, really wraps also around feelings.
And do
Again,
you think the story part of visual storytelling, do you think it's in your craft, is it more implicit in a sense that it's not textual, it's not explicit like a caption? You don't do like the actual story in terms of copy, right? You mostly focus on the photography, right?
right. But I'll keep in mind, what is the story I'm trying to capture?
I
So,
see. Got it.
if I'm specifically, on a job, or even, what captures that story.
Got
So
it.
it could be as much as a family outing. What was
I
that
see.
story? What was that moment? And that's the thing, I think, that, photographers, just like writers, a lot of people, you have a really vast awareness. Like it
Right.
seems like you spot things that maybe somebody else didn't spot, and you look at it in a certain way, and it's like, if you're knowledgeable about the technical aspect of it, if you
Right.
click, that you look at it and it intrigues you. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. No, this is so true. I see it all the time. Uh, let's stay still on the forest view level.
okay.
and and what would you say is the main reason, when you use pets, it creates a stronger emotional connection with audiences?
For a lot of different reasons,
Mhm.
it's so varied. It could be for individuals with their pets,
Mhm.
and it creates priceless memories. I mean, sadly, that, dogs don't live that long,
Right.
and, they live fully. And I feel
Yep.
like, having photos that really honor the dog in their
Mhm.
spirit. Like we all have pictures on our iPhone, and everyone's like, look
Right.
at this picture, and you're like, wait, I can't really see, it's kind of blurry.
Yeah. Yep.
So really, capturing photos that do justice
Mm.
to the subjects, and the stories. It's a great tool in animal advocacy. I've found, literally my photos give a voice to the voiceless dogs.
Right.
I photograph for shelters. I photograph for rescues. It's enabled me to bring awareness to places, small villages in Mexico, in Cartagena, where
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
doing amazing work. And you could talk about it, and I could tell that story to somebody. But when I
Right.
show a photo to somebody of what was there,
It's universal language. Yeah. You don't need to translate that. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
and it's also so impactful.
Mhm.
I mean, we all have memories, visions, whether it's from, I'm dating myself, but Life magazine,
Yeah. Yeah.
images of momentous occasions, whether they're
Right.
sad, happy. And if you go back in your brain,
Yeah.
it's an image that pops up.
Yeah.
It's rarely words, and they're seared
Absolutely.
into us.
Yeah.
So it's, super powerful. And like, I guess is the word subjective, everybody sees something different too when
No.
they look at an image.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is, I see, the use of pets is definitely a powerful way to create empathy, just because of their likability and that emotional bond that, pet owners, doesn't matter if you have a dog or a cat. I was just having a weekend with friends that had a cat. So I went through this whole experience, how they tend for it, and, the whole, behavioral changes based on the environment. So people can trigger all these relatable moments that you catch in your photos to, things they have in their own home or their friends or somebody from their past, to your point about earlier scenes that kind of stuck in their mind. So yeah, no, this is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about your work at Dogs I Meet. Can you talk a little bit about your typical services? And I know you have several use cases.
Sure. I mean, at the core, I'm a dog photographer,
Yeah.
with a background in marketing and brand strategy and storytelling. So
Mhm.
versus a photo of, say, like a dog just sitting there with a product next to it,
Right.
doesn't necessarily tell that story.
Right.
If you're talking about even, for example, I did a photo shoot for, it was like a dog supplement company,
I see.
and all of their previous photos were just that, a dog with the product next to it. And I mean, I'm not saying that you don't match that up, but,
Sure.
I was like, well, what's the story behind it? Like,
Yeah.
why do people care? Why do people want to buy this supplement?
Exactly.
And it's for health, and it's also like a wellness,
Mm.
and they want to elevate what they're doing for their dog. So I did a
Mhm.
full series, like, really, of like a dog being served a breakfast tray with the supplement on it in bed. The
Oh,
dog had a little on.
oh, that's so funny.
And it was very engaging, and it brought you into it, and you could create different stories in your mind. But the idea, again, was that you really care about your dog, and you want your dog to have the best.
Yeah, it's like a humanizing strategy of kind of putting the dog doing things a human would do in this case.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Which we all do. So that's one example.
Yeah.
I have another client that's veterinary emergency hospitals,
Mhm.
and they're 24/7, but they're really unique.
Mhm.
And their story is that they don't separate you from your pet.
Right.
So, it's takes the stress level down. I mean, being in an emergency hospital, whether
Oh
it's
yeah.
for humans or animals, is extremely stressful. And, if anybody has a dog or
This
a
is
pet,
amazing.
generally you go into these places, you wait in the waiting room, they take the
Right.
animal from you, you're terrified, the animal's terrified.
No, yeah, of course.
So this company, is, on a mission to change, emergency. And they realize that they've got this powerful story. And, they were really clear on what their story was, and they wanted photographs to tell the story
I
of
see.
them in action. And it was very difficult to get the photographs because, in a veterinary hospital, the lighting is poor, it's
Oh, yeah.
fluorescent,
Yeah, yeah.
crazy things going on. So they knew that they needed to bring somebody in that
Mm, yeah,
captured the
yeah.
story. So
Right.
in an instance like that, that is the story. I'm not creating the story. I'm documenting the
Yeah, it's a
story.
documentary initiative. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
So I would stay, for hours and just sort of capture what
Mhm.
came through the door.
Yeah,
Um, and just try to frame it or catch those moments, even when somebody, a look on somebody's face, a look on the dog's face. So
got it.
that's another, strong storytelling way to do
Right.
it.
But regardless if it's a marketing or, office wall art you mentioned or therapy, like in the case you just described, what is the process you go through with the client? I mean, do they give you a brief? Do they give you a business goals? Do you do some research?
It varies. I start doing my own,
Mhm.
research so that I come in knowledgeable about them.
Uh-huh.
And then I do, try to spend quite a bit of time because their story is so important. Their story is the story I'm trying to tell.
Right, right.
Um, and particularly in pet brands, like
Mhm.
founders' origin stories are very often because of a relationship that they had with a pet
Oh,
that made them want to find a solution.
interesting.
And back to the emergency room,
Yeah,
the fellow who created it, he said, you don't take your child into an emergency room and they don't take your child away. Like, why do we do things this way? I don't want to
right.
do things this way. I
Yeah,
want to be a disruptor and do it
exactly.
the way it should be.
Sure.
People who start, these fresh food for dogs,
Hmm.
the supplements, all of that. If you go into their story, most times it was, like I said, a pet that they lost to an
I see.
illness or a pet that had some kind of terrible food allergies and couldn't keep food down. So they started
Right.
on their own. Um, and when you start to uncover their
Hmm.
story, that's the power of it.
Yeah. Because then you
And,
know how to basically focus in your photography on certain elements in the story and amplify them. So it's easy for, I guess, the audience to capture that as they view the photo.
Exactly. And, you know, um, I mean, our pets are
Hmm.
basically our children, and
Yep.
that's one of the reasons why we're about to see a $360 billion pet industry. It's
Yeah,
absolutely exploded. So you
sure.
also need to, when you're telling the story, you need to build trust.
Right.
Otherwise, why would somebody want to buy that product if you
Right.
haven't instilled trust? Yep, sure, there's facts and all kinds of things like that, but it's the stories of the customers,
Hmm.
the stories of the business. So, and it's my job to find ways to show that,
Right. But isn't it true, I know that obviously we all emotional decision maker or emotional buyers, and especially in photography, you can convey emotion very powerfully. But the first step in every photo, obviously, is to capture attention before you even can talk about trust and empathy. Do you do anything special to capture attention in your photography?
I think the attention is the way that I photograph dogs.
Mm,
And it's my skill at getting a dog. And like, I've photographed thousands of dogs, and you can actually see different expressions on
right.
them. And different emotions from the dogs. And if you able to capture that, like that starts the conversation.
Right. I think this is actually a great segue. Maybe you show us a few example visuals that you have, and we can discuss that.
Sure. I'm going to share my screen.
Great.
And there we go. So this I'll show you that one later. Here's the veterinary emergency group. And you can see this is their staff, but I mean, you can see the intensity and the emotion on everybody's face, and they're not doing it in a they have an open ER policy, so it's super transparent, and there are other people in the room at the same time, which actually works to lower the anxiety for others. And again, here showing that this dog is, here's the person who works there, here's the owner of the dog, and you can just see how much calmer the dog is. It's remaining, so you get a feeling as well from that.
And quick question about the previous one. Do you do also like a series of photos like this one? To me, when I first saw it, I thought this is like the resolution part of the story, when the dog is brought back to the owner after the treatment, and this is kind of the resolution of the story, kind of the release. Do you find yourself doing like a before, middle, and after kind of stories?
Sometimes when I can, it's not always. So in a story on this too, is part of their marketing is that they meet the dog where they're at. So that's an actual exam.
I see.
Okay? They do their exams on the floor. They do what needs to be done to keep the dog comfortable.
Got it.
And in this, you can't really see it in this instance. This dog wasn't quite as sick, so they did it in the lobby versus in the ER.
Right.
Because they could. Here's another story, that this is happening, and this cat is literally perched, on his dad's back because he's comfortable, and that's how that they're doing the exam.
I see.
So it kind of varies, and ultimately, once you had like for them, I do a lot of photos, and it depends on what they're using.
Do you ask them questions like, what is your target emotion for this visual story that you're trying to communicate?
Well, for that particular one, I know they're trying, and actually, if I go back here, this is a quote from the marketing manager, the chief marketing officer. And what they're trying to convey is the unique relationship between their team and the pets that they care for, and how they don't separate them.
Got it.
And the transparency. So that that's always what I'm conveying.
Got it.
For them. So I have that in my mindset when I'm looking at photos, and they have stories literally unfold in front of me. I mean, I can look one way, and sometimes I just see a person. Like, you're allowed to sleep overnight. Like, you don't have to. You never need to leave the pet. If you want to sleep on the floor, or if you want to sleep on a cot, you do.
I see.
So people don't leave. So sometimes I capture just that, the intense emotion of that human, worried about their pet.
The B-roll moments.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. And this is actually a bed and breakfast in Martha's Vineyard, which is dog friendly. So funny. I mean, literally, as a bed and breakfast, it's like a charming, homey place, and you feel like you're in your own home, but it's usually much nicer than your own home. And your dog is there with you, so it's an elevated experience.
Sure. So these are
And
different things it could do, the dog could do at the hotel, right?
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
so I mean, and the idea in this is, you know, like our home is your home and your
Yeah.
dog's too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of thing. Here's a, you know, pet brand, which also the origin story on this was, I think they are a husband and wife team. One's a Harvard grad, one's an MIT grad.
Mm.
They had a cat that like was sick and they were trying to feed it different things, and they did all kinds of research and they
Yep.
came up with this food. But, you know, in this, the idea is, you know, you look at that picture and it makes you smile. You literally, like, I mean, that dog looks like they're having a conversation. The dog
Yeah.
is like, whoa, can't wait to get my hands on that food, you know, because he really couldn't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
No,
know,
for sure.
so again, it's that feeling, you know,
Mhm.
I think it was Simon Sinek that had a quote, you know, people buy a feeling, you
Yeah.
know, you can't
Yeah.
tell them there's value. They have to
Right.
feel that there's value.
Exactly.
Um,
For sure.
you know,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm aiming for. And again, you know, when you understand the story and you know, I mean, I set this up, but then the interaction was organic, you know,
Right.
like it was authentic. And I just waited for that moment to capture that authentic engagement of
Yeah.
what the story was.
Right.
You know, this is a very cool place. It's called a tiny house resort. I don't know if you know about the little tiny houses that's kind of popular these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
So it's up in upstate New York, and I don't know, they have like 20 luxury tiny houses on acres and acres of beautiful land with waterfall and pool, but they are super dog friendly.
Oh, I see.
So, like I call, if you're like a person who travels with your dog,
Hmm.
Kimpton Hotels, I probably shouldn't be dropping all these names, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't work for Kimpton. I'd like to,
Yeah.
but I call this tiny house the Kimpton of tiny
Right.
because they're truly like pet friendly. You know, some places are like, yeah, if your dog's under 25 pounds, you know, we'll let you pay us another
Yeah.
$75 plus a $75 cleaning fee. But yeah,
Oh, I
we're
see.
pet friendly, you know, but Kimpton's motto is if it can walk through the door, you can keep that pet there.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And it's actually kind of turned this on its head, instead of kind of a no pet policy, when it's pet friendly, it's actually a nice, kind of differentiating perk to attract customers. Mhm.
Exactly. So, you know, this was an ad you can vaguely see
Mhm.
behind there, the person,
Oh, yeah.
you know, the dog having an awesome time, you
Yeah.
know, and they talk about, and it, in the end, it's, we promise an unforgettable bonding experience with you and
Mm.
your dog,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of thing. So they did a full like dog weekend. They had all kinds of perks. And actually, I was there photographing for them, both for brand photos and capturing the event.
Oh, I see.
But people who came that weekend I photographed their dog complimentary because the hotel paid for it. So it was a perk as well that they came away with.
Yeah, I like the dynamic movement on the right.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, these are dogs in action,
Yeah.
playing with this ball,
Yeah.
like, you know, focus, the toy is flying in the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so you can see, you get that feeling that I
Yeah.
want my dog to enjoy that, like that. Like,
Yeah, and to your point earlier, sometimes when you see static photos, like in these dynamic examples, what typically happens is that the viewers complete the story in their minds, basically of what happened before and what will happen after.
right.
So this is just the trigger, basically, to start the story based on their bag of experiences from the past.
Exactly. Kind of goes back to what I was saying, is it's like, it's your job to draw them in
Yeah.
and let them then tell their own story, but in a way you want it to be.
Right. Yeah, because you already frame it for them, and
Right.
you know the caption, the copy gives them the direction. Yeah.
Exactly, you
Mhm.
know. So, and actually, these dogs all in this photo are rescue dogs.
Oh, I see.
So I very often
Mhm.
will work with rescue dogs from shelters, or, you know, rescue dogs to give them exposure.
Yep.
I worked with the Louisiana SPCA. I happen
Mm.
to have been taken in New Orleans. And that's a bonus. It's a program that I offer. So first of all, the Louisiana SPCA shares
Mhm.
these photos.
I see.
So it's double exposure. The exposure for the dogs, particularly this middle one, was up for adoption, you know.
Right.
So it's you know, if you want to talk about stories, a good photo can mean a life and a death of a rescue animal.
Yeah, for sure.
People need to see that dog in their home. They
Yeah.
need to look at a photo and say, yeah, I can see me playing with that dog.
That's actually a very important point you just made here that I keep pounding on my clients and students, is that we have this unique capability, I call it superpower, to visualize things that never happened yet.
Right.
Like the fact you just described, I can perfectly see myself having this dog in my backyard.
Mhm.
It's a capability we all have, and we use it in a variety of ways. Like even when you do house hunting and you enter a living room, that boom, you get this chemistry. I can perfectly see myself entertaining here. It's the same muscle that we
Same
all
thing. You
have.
took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say staging a house, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and leaving it more as a blank.
exactly.
And when you stage a house, you leave it more as a blank canvas, because you want people to look at it and fill it with their ideas
Yeah,
and their memories.
exactly.
You know, with a dog, when you see a photo of a dog in poor lighting,
Mhm.
dirty and scared because it was just brought in to a
Mhm.
rescue in a cinder block in the corner.
Yep.
You look at that, and people, wrongly so, but people do feel that dogs in shelters
Mm,
have something wrong with them. That's why they're there.
I see.
When you look at that photo, that perpetrates that thought process. You
Yeah,
know, again, it's the story you want to tell.
for
Um,
sure.
So if you take time, you know, I often volunteer at places to take
Mhm.
photos of dogs, and it takes a while because you have to, you know, these dogs are scared. So
Yeah,
you have to wait a little bit until they're comfortable. Uh,
right.
you know, and
To
then
work with them, to kind of let them relax. It's almost like taking a portrait photography with people, right?
absolutely, you know, and the same
Yeah.
thing, you know, when you start to notice, you see their body language, you know. So if I see a dog with their ears down and their eyes down, you know, break, time out.
Oh, I see. So you can read all those little signs of the body language of the dogs. Wow, that's
Right.
incredible.
So, you know, that's the difference too. Of
Mhm.
if for any, you know, people are like, well, let's throw a dog in the picture.
Yeah, yeah,
But you don't get that unless it's a person that understands dogs and is trained in taking
right.
dog photos. So, you know, there's a benefit to having somebody like me do your photographs,
Yeah,
rather, you know, than a
because
general.
you might say you have another hat you're wearing in addition to being photographer. You like a dog whisperer in a way
Right,
that knows how to engage the dog.
right. Otherwise, you know,
Yeah.
and then I bring it to, you know, we talk about, I always say, put a dog in the picture, any brand.
Mm,
And, you know, it's not new. I mean, here's just, you know, some IKEA, Target, Hyundai,
right. Yeah.
banks do it, you know, people,
Yeah.
all kinds of people, you know, they realize that there's an emotional attachment, that, you know, they just have a memory attachment, like those
Mhm.
photos stay in your mind.
Mhm.
Think about the Super Bowl photos, Budweiser,
Right. Yeah.
You know, which one did everybody remember at the end? The dog that chased after the Clydesdale?
Yeah. 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 Of course. Yeah. I
You
remember
know?
that.
Right, and it results in more sales. And you could take it a step further to, you know, brands that you know, get involved. And there was, I think it was WeatherTech,
Hmm.
who, you know, mostly makes the car mats, but this one
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
makes the car mats, but they also do make like dog bowls and things like that.
Right.
The owner of that, his dog Scout, a golden retriever, is featured in many WeatherTech commercials.
Oh, interesting.
That dog got I don't have it to show it. I almost put it in there.
Hmm.
The dog got cancer.
Oh.
And I believe it was the University of Wisconsin Veterinary School. He took the dog to that hospital and they treated the dog, and the dog, it turned out it was in remission. It did wind up
Hmm.
passing away shortly after. But I can't remember which Super Bowl it was. The man paid $6 million, and the ad is about his dog, and it's a tribute to this hospital for
Oh,
saving his
wow.
dog's life. So,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
you know, you're talking about the layers of connection and emotions. He didn't even do a WeatherTech commercial. He,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
he,
incredible. Hmm.
and he wound up through that cause marketing. You know, he
Mhm.
raised a lot of money for the hospital, which he
Yeah.
wanted to do because they saved his dog's life. So,
No, it's
you know,
yeah, the emotional story and is definitely an important player here. But you know what you said earlier, you know, the fact that pets has this built-in likability that
they do.
brands want to use that, because once you have that likability, those positive emotions cross over eventually to the brand.
Exactly. I think it's actually 56. I can't quote the name of the study, but 56% more likely if you put a dog in
Mhm.
your ad,
Yeah.
that there's 56% more likely intent to purchase
Right.
what that is.
Yeah.
We all know this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just there we go. Oops. He's been around since 1999. They've
Uh-huh.
used it, and they
Yep.
put him in about 20 different ads a year.
Yeah, that's a
And
lot.
then this one, I'll fast forward, but this is a brilliant commercial from Hyundai. It starts off with they got a new car.
Yeah.
Oh, they got a new puppy. Guy's not really very happy. You know, and it's you know, it brings you through this whole story.
Yeah, the struggles. Yeah.
Right. The struggles, but now you start to see like a bond happening between them. And he's really like, the dog is becoming his best friend. Here you go. You see, now he's playing with
Right.
the dog.
Yeah.
And they've, you know, all they're doing is a car. They're marking the miles, the life, the journey of the car through the
Right.
relationship. And then this is now the kids come, dog sitting in the front. They're wearing look-alike clothes. The dogs have now, the kids have been relegated to the back.
Right.
And,
Right.
you know, it's your journey. So to me, brilliant.
Yeah. And this is the type of, you know, examples that that's why I like visual storytelling, unlike the traditional, you know, interruption marketing or advertising that focus on buy now. There's a
Right.
story here. It feels like a short film from Netflix, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why, you know, when you see that, you know, the barriers are coming down, you consume it as, you know, a normal form of art. And that's the beauty of it, because when you focus on the art first and the brand second, I think that's where, you know, you can connect more emotionally. So
Exactly.
that's great. So I'm kind of wondering, you know, since you've been doing a lot of Photoshop, like photo shoots with different brands, how were you managing during the pandemic, you know, with everything remote?
The pandemic shut me down. And
Okay.
that is the problem there, you know.
You can do like a remote photo shoots or,
There are people that can. I
yep,
think there was a picture of Meghan and Harry under a tree
I see.
when she was pregnant, and it was a
Right.
photographer in England that did that through an iPad.
Oh, I see.
So there are some, you know,
Mm,
there are ways to do it.
yep.
But in general, you know, it just, you know, it was the pandemic
Mm,
was really
mm.
took me a lot of time to,
To kind of
you know,
readjust. Yeah.
to readjust because I
Yeah.
had built my business. I also travel
Mm,
do rescues
I see.
in Mexico and Cartagena. I was doing work in Puerto
On
Rico
site. Yeah. Mhm.
on site, and for there, I had actually gone to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria
Mm,
to
wow.
document the problem that they were having, because
Mm,
otherwise people can't relate to it. You can talk about it, but
got it.
you
No, that
know,
makes sense.
once you see it. So, you know, I'd created a business that had all of my loves: travel,
Mm,
dogs, photography, storytelling. And I was like,
yeah.
oh.
Exactly. Yeah. No, for sure.
You
Yeah.
know, but interestingly enough, after, you know, doing nothing for months, but trying to figure out
Yeah.
like what was my pivot and what am I going to do? Um, I came up with I gave a lot of thought to dogs and their role during
Mhm.
the pandemic.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
for,
The stress reliever. Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, to me, it was their shining moment. I coined the phrase that, you know, the pandemic made every dog a therapy dog,
Yeah. So true.
because,
Yeah.
you know, and so what I wound up
Also,
doing,
loneliness, the problem of loneliness. Yeah.
unbelievable. I did
Yeah.
a project because I did a personal project, a passion project called Tales of Support,
Hmm.
and it was about just that. And I
Hmm.
interviewed people, so I got both the narrative and the
Yeah.
stories.
I see.
Actually, there's let me just see if can I could possibly hold on one second. I'm gonna just, but so it was called Tales of Support. I interviewed probably about 25 people and got a lot of different stories again. And then I photographed them, and that really basically kind of saved my business, because I wound up getting press from it. Let me
Oh, I see.
I'm going to share again just to give you an idea of what that was.
Yeah. And these are all dog owners or not necessarily?
Yeah, and there was a wide variety of
Mm.
people that got dogs during the pandemic,
Oh, I see.
that
Yeah.
had dogs, and like,
Mm.
and she's a healthcare worker, and it talks about how isolated she was, you know, on the front line, and when
Yeah.
she came home, you know, how the dog was her salvation.
Mm.
This girl is actually a vet student, and
I
there's a
see.
whole, you know, backstory.
Yeah.
But you can see also, if I, you know, through the photos, you just
That's
get
a
a
great
sense
idea.
of their relationship, you
Yeah.
know. This one here, she worked also in a senior home, which got
Mm.
hit so bad. And she talks about how at night she would come home and, you know, like a complete emotional wreck. And she'd
Mhm.
take the dog out for walks, and
Nice.
she'd talk to the dog.
Wow.
And like, you know, she'd go for a walk for an hour and she'd tell the dog all the things that were bottled up in her.
Yeah.
And, you know,
It's
she talks about how that was a lifesaver. And like, even these photos, there's layers of stories. These were taken at this girl's alma mater, college,
mm.
that her mom graduated from, that she graduated from.
Right.
So, you know,
Right. So
there were different stories. This one here, these people had just gotten engaged. I think it was
mm.
Valentine's Day they got engaged. It was beginning or middle of March that it happened. This fella had just bought franchise, I think Sweetwater's
Mm.
coffee shop. So these were taken in their coffee shop. She's a nurse, you know, and again, it
Yeah,
was
different walks of lives. And is it all these stories you did during the pandemic, or?
during the pandemic. So
That's
I
amazing.
figured out that I was able to do it. I would interview them on Zoom
Mm.
and schedule
The photo
a photo
shoots.
shoot. This is
Yeah.
probably the one with
Mm.
the coffee was the only one done indoors, but I
Indoors, yeah.
used a long lens. So,
Mm. I see. So you
you
were
know,
not too close. Yeah, got it.
exactly. So it
Mhm.
was really, you know, within the COVID protocol.
Awesome. That's
Of it.
great. I mean, what a wonderful project, congratulations. It's a great example for everybody, watching or tuning in right now. Sometimes when you are going through rough patch in your job, try to figure out, how to turn this lemon into lemonade, like in this example.
Exactly. I was like, oh, and I mean, it also, it gave me content to
Yeah,
talk about on LinkedIn
exactly.
and Instagram, and on for me as well. Like once I
Mhm.
started photographing again, and once I started doing things, it was, it was good for me because,
No, yeah, something to do and something to kind of continue working.
right.
This is great. Before I forget, if you go back to your backdrop in your office right now, you
Yes.
talked about the third use case that you focus on, which is a little bit interesting. Talked about wall art in offices where you use pets.
Exactly. So, not we've spent a lot of time talking about the benefits of
Yeah.
of pets. I mean, literally, oxytocin.
Yeah.
It's increased by 300% by
Mhm.
looking at a picture,
Yeah.
not just the dog. So certainly, in an
Mhm.
accountant's office, in a dentist's office,
Yeah.
in a hospital, you can't have the pets, but you can have the benefits of the pet.
Right.
And
And
if
that's
you
not necessarily for pet brands. It could be for any brand.
any brand, and even more so,
Mhm.
I recommend it for non-pet brands.
Yeah.
Boy, any kind of service business that
Mhm.
involves a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Lawyers, accountants.
Yeah.
It's a complete icebreaker.
Kind of
People look at a picture.
humanizing the experience a little bit. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. People will look at a picture. Oh, it starts a conversation.
Exactly.
And it builds trust. It draws them in. It
Yeah.
makes them smile. They're more relaxed.
Yeah.
So there's huge benefits to car dealers. Is
Mm.
a great place
Interesting.
to have them. And I mean, they really are a work of art,
Sure.
and again, stories like this is my dog
Mhm.
on a beach in Martha's Vineyard, but
Yeah.
she, to me, like, it's her Rin Tin Tin moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And even just a shot of her at the beach,
Mhm.
you start thinking right away,
Yeah. Yeah. What do I have in my Rolodex of visuals from the past that relates to this photo that I can appreciate? How does it make sense in my world?
right. And the other one, capturing, there's that bond,
Mhm.
that I talk about, that's really, that moment in time. That's
Sure.
another thing that I love about photography, is how, it literally freezes a moment in time. The other thing you can do as well is use it as an incentive. There are different ways. So if I go in and I'm going to photograph for a business,
Mhm.
let's say it's a dentist's office,
Right.
first of all, it's a great distraction while they're sitting
Yeah.
there, but I can photograph the employees' dogs.
Mm.
So, that becomes part of the package. So now they've just given, a really great perk
Oh,
to
I see.
the people in their office, because everybody likes to see their dogs photographed.
Yeah, because typically you go to a cube in an office, you see, their pets in framed photos and, on the desk or something. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like an added bonus
Mhm.
that you've just given your employees,
A retention scheme, right? Yeah.
a retention scheme.
Yeah.
They love it, brings them joy every
Yeah.
time that they look at that. The veterinary clinic,
Mhm.
I go around the country to those different offices because each hospital wants their own people in
Right.
it,
Yeah.
because that's meaningful to their employees.
Mhm.
So you can do that, using
Yeah.
wall art for
Yeah.
a business.
No, absolutely. This is, I really love this idea of the wall art.
Mhm.
Yeah, before we close, I'm kind of wondering, if you can give me like your top 3 tips for any brand that would like to enter, to use pets in their visual storytelling, and not necessarily pet brands.
Really think of the story.
Mhm.
What do you want to convey?
Mhm.
And and then you need to work with someone,
Yeah,
and you could be a smaller brand, I mean,
sure.
like the Hyundai that did that, they probably, or the Subaru,
Sure.
big one, I forgot the name of those dogs. They do it big,
Yeah.
I mean, they've got dog trainers
Yeah.
there.
It's a whole
They've got
production.
a
Yeah.
whole
Mhm.
production.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have a whole production.
Yeah.
These photos that I showed you from mine, are me and my camera, and sometimes an assistant, occasionally,
Yeah.
if need be, a videographer.
Yeah. It's
With
really the story that really is the power of this approach to work. It's not the production size.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, you can be a small,
Yeah.
medium-sized business and, really tell your story.
Exactly.
You can tell it through the eyes of the dog. You could tell it to
Yeah.
evoke feeling. You could tell it through a person.
Mhm.
I think it's Orvis also does a brilliant job talking about their dogs,
Mhm.
and bringing them out on a hunt kind of
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
it was the story, it was the dog was old, and it was the last time the dog was going to be going out. And like really subtly, they didn't, you saw the Orvis products,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but they never talked about that. You were
Sure.
drawn in with the story of this dog's last hunt that had,
Yeah.
and how the man made it happen.
Yeah.
So it's a story that you uncover and you decide how you want to tell it. And it's certainly,
Mhm.
important, I think, to have a guide, like somebody like me or
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
or, that helps them uncover the story and has the vision to tell the story
To bring it to
clearly.
life. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Mhm.
No, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much, Mindy. I've learned so much. Definitely the world of pets as an empathy bridge to audiences' hearts is super important these days, especially since, there's so staggering information overload. So you gotta, stand out in some way. So if people would like to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, they can reach me. My website is dogseyemeet.com.
Mhm.
My email is simply Mindy@dogseyemeet.
Yeah.
And my phone number and everything is on my website because I'm old school. I like to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
able to pick up a phone and call me if that's how they
Sure.
want to connect with me.
Sure.
My Instagram is @dogseyemeet.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are tons of photos there, right?
Exactly. So, and
Yeah.
I offer a free consultation call, a discovery call. I call it my non-sales call.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a call like that, we can talk. I'm happy to talk to anybody and sort of uncover and take them a little bit on a journey. And I think whether people use me or other people, I think when things are really authentic, there's a good bond between who's telling your story.
Definitely, for
So
sure.
that
Yeah.
call is also for me to see, like, if
Mhm.
I think that we're a good fit.
Yeah,
And their story resonates with me.
absolutely. Yeah, that's
So,
important.
yeah.
So thanks again, Mindy. This was phenomenal. I learned so much, and I hope to see everybody in my next episode of the Visual Storytelling Today. So until next time, have a
Thank
great,
you.
wonderful day.
Thank you so much. I really am so happy that you invited me on. Thank you.
No, gladly. Thanks.